Hey, what's up guys, it's Darius, and with smartphone cameras getting better and better, the constant question is, do we still need a budget DSLR? They're heavy and fairly expensive, but can they be replaced with something that fits in our pockets, being our smartphones? I'm going to test that, and I will compare the Google Pixel versus the Samsung Galaxy S7 and my Nikon D3200. This time, however, rather than using the kit lens like I did last time, you guys have requested that I use a better lens. I'm going to be using the Sigma 18-35 f1.8 lens. It is amazing. I use it all the time to film. I'm actually using it right now and it's just super sharp. Now I know a smartphone cannot truly replace a DSLR, especially not for a professional, but this comparison is for the average consumer just looking at the image quality, not looking at interchangeable lenses, bigger sensors or anything like that. Just the pure image quality. Also, while they all have manual modes and support raw images, again, this is for the average consumer and I doubt that they will edit raw images. So for fairness sake, all these images are unedited and were taken in auto mode. By the way, all the full resolution images are down below if you want to compare them for yourself. Starting with the first image taken outside on a fairly sunny day, the colors are a little more on the cooler side compared to the others on the S7. The D3200 is a lot warmer and the Pixel is in between those. The DSLR is, however, much more true to life, and this is a common trend you will see throughout this comparison. Both the smartphones also boost the saturation and the contrast a bit. They all do a good job in terms of dynamic range, and the detail and the highlights on the top of the building, for example, are still present. All of them are very sharp and detailed, however when zooming in, the DSLR is much sharper due to the higher megapixels. The S7 slightly over-sharpens, and that is also very common for the Samsung cameras. Additionally, the D3200 has a softer image. Moving on to the next image, again the DSLR is much more true to life. In this case it's a little darker than the other images. The S7 is probably the brightest, and the Pixel has a little warmer colors, and I'd say it's overall the best image because the D3200 is a little too dark. Again, the DSLR is a little softer, but all are very detailed and sharp, but the S7 still over-sharpens. Just a quick note on the focusing speed, they're all very fast, but I was particularly impressed with the dual pixel autofocus on the S7, which is very, very fast. Moving on to an image which was taken in the golden hour, so the hour before sunset. The D3200 is the best, I'd say, and the S7 is the worst. The S7 does not manage to grab focus, the image is way too bright, and there's some noise on the right side. The Pixel is a little warmer in terms of the colors, but it's too contrasty and also slightly too dark. Detail is good on the Pixel and the D3200, but since the S7 does not manage to grab focus properly, it's not very detailed. Moving on to the image of the sky, a great dynamic range test. On the DSLR, the sky is well exposed, but the houses on the bottom are a little too dark. The smartphones, on the other hand, have auto HDR and boosts the brightness of the houses a bit, so they are clearly visible, but there's also a little bit of noise. I'd say the S7 is better than the Pixel. It has good colors, but the Pixel struggles and lacks saturation in the sky. Moving on to an indoor shot, they all have very nice depth of field, but due to the better lens, it's a little better on the D3200. It also has some cooler colors, and the S7 has a slight orange tint indoors. Another thing to mention is the background. On the DSLR and the S7, it's completely blown out, which is natural, but on the Pixel, due to a very aggressive auto HDR, you can actually see the detail in it. That's actually very impressive and can be very beneficial. Overall, I'd give the win to the Pixel in this image. On the S7, there's a little noise and some sharpening going on, and the D3200 sadly also has some noise and artifacts. This image is great to test the detail. The S7 has a cooler image than the rest of them, and again the DSLR is a little softer, and it doesn't have so much contrast like the others. The detail is again the best on the D3200. Now here we have a very difficult shot. The background is super bright and the foreground is barely lit at all. Again, the DSLR captures what is there. That means the background is bright but not super overexposed, but the foreground is barely visible. Now while that's more realistic, it's not actually practical because you can't see anything. The smartphones, on the other hand, boost the brightness a bit, again I think due to auto HDR. And while that's not true to life, it's better because you can actually see the foreground. One minor issue, on the S7 there's some softening going on, and it sort of looks like the beauty mode where there's too much processing going on. Moving on to low light images, here the pixel is the brightest, and the S7 has a slight orange tint and this slight beauty mode like processing again, but sadly it's also a little desaturated. Here the DSLR shines due to its great depth of field. It just looks much better. There is some noise, but it overall just looks much better than the other two. However, one thing you notice when you zoom in is that none of them are very sharp. Now this is a difficult situation, there's almost no light at all. The DSLR manages to create a great depth of field, and the colors are also very good. The pixel is good, and the colors are a little cooler, but still good. The Samsung is the worst out of them. It's again desaturated and has this orange tint. When zooming in, you notice that none of them are very sharp. The S7 is the worst, I'd say, but the others also don't manage to fully focus on the plant. Despite the much larger sensor on the D3200, in terms of noise, it's definitely the worst. And like I said, the S7 has a little too much processing going on. Now the Pixel does a good job. Moving on to the last low light test, we have even less light and the cameras decide to use the flash. The Nikon is just way better. Both smartphones have a strong flash, but it causes strong shadows and it blends the foreground with the background a bit. It's especially bad on the S7. The strong flash, however, can come in handy in a couple of situations. Due to the nice bokeh and the great color accuracy, the DSLR is just much better. The S7 is good too in terms of colors, and the Pixel is a little warmer, but it comes down to personal preference which of the two smartphones you prefer. Despite that, the D3200 is clearly the winner here. They're all very detailed and sharp, but for some weird reason, the Nikon does not focus on the face, but rather on the top of the head. Coming to the last part of the test, video. This is a little different than usual. This is just a stationary shot because the D3200 does not have autofocus in video, nor OAS due to the lens, and it also only shoots in 1080p video. But looking at the video, the Pixel is probably a little desaturated, and the D3200 is a little dark, and it sadly has a little noise. The S7 is probably the best one. It's the sharpest, they all have a good depth of field, and they're all fairly detailed, but the smartphones are a little better because they're in 4K. In terms of actual video work, like I'm doing, a DSLR is much better due to interchangeable lenses, for example, and a bigger sensor. But in terms of just looking at the raw image quality of the video, especially the S7 do a very good job. I do have to mention that the D3200 is not particularly good for video. I did, however, use it for all of my earlier videos, so you can check the video quality there if you want to. And I'm sure that if I would have used a DSLM like my Panasonic G7, it would have been much better than the smartphones. Overall, I'd say if you have a new smartphone with a great camera, then as the average consumer, there's no need to buy a budget DSLR, unless you're taking a lot of pictures or you need interchangeable lenses for the extra zoom range, for example, if you're traveling. Otherwise, you could also go with a point and shoot as a compromise. Thank you guys for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to smash the like button, comment down below if you have any feedback. Also comment down below what camera you preferred. For pictures, I mostly prefer the D3200 or the Pixel, but for video, the S7 was the best. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of my upcoming videos. See you in the next one. Bye.